How to stop conflict before it starts. To do this, you must understand the why behind why conflict happens. Today, my goal is to help you understand what causes conflict within each of the 9 Enneagram types, why it causes conflict. Sometimes conflict is because triggers are activated or feelings are hurt or different things like that. And so I want to help you guys understand the why behind it. And to do that, I'm going to go over 3 things within all 9 Enneagram types to help you guys. The first thing is, what causes conflict within each of the types? What is it? What just activates them in a way where, it causes them to get upset or angry or mad or feelings hurt or anything like that? What causes it? The second thing we're going to go over is, what do the behaviors look like within all 9 types? And the third thing is how to navigate within conflict with other Enneagram types. And what do we do when conflict happens? Well, I think it's one of 2 things. The first thing is we don't resolve it. We ignore it. It becomes unresolved conflict and it builds and builds and builds, and that never leads anywhere good, right? And the second thing is we just don't understand each other's needs. We don't understand each other's why. What we need to understand is that there are so many different types of people out there and we approach things differently. And so a lot of times we're projecting our own needs and wants in that moment. Does that make sense? Where as a 9, how I handle conflict is different than how a 1 does. But sometimes I could think like, oh man, and project how I would handle it. And think, well, is that how they're handling it or anything like that? So, and it's not, we have different triggers, different things that make us upset, different things that hurt our feelings. And so the goal is to learn about each other, understand each other, have hard conversations, have deep conversations, and have good relationships. So with all that said, let's go ahead and dive into the type 1. All right. So here are some things that causes conflict with the Enneagram type 1, being criticized, somebody not following through with what they said they're going to do, dishonesty, unfairness, somebody changing the plan. They're on, this plan, they're going forward or whatever it is. And if somebody just all of a sudden is like, no, we're not going to do that, we're going to change the plan, that's really hard for a 1. And the last thing I would say is unfairness. That's, something that could cause conflict with that 1. So what's the behavior look like within the 1 when any of these things happen? Well, they can say nothing. They could get quiet. They can go inward and not address what's wrong. They could maybe, walk away from the relationship, walk away from, because there's something there that's bothered them and it's just done. They could just be done. They might make statements that are like harsh and like maybe sarcastic, maybe just all of a sudden, they're upset, but a lot of times the 1s don't want to show that they're upset. And so it'll come out in other ways. And so those are some of the behaviors you might get from the 1. Okay, and then moving on to how to navigate with that type 1 within conflict. Take a problem-solving approach. They really respect that. They respect logical solutions. And they also respect if you own your own parts. That's really important for the 1. Let them go first. Sometimes they do want to go first and kind of get it all out of whatever it is. I would say allow them time to think through their feelings and thoughts and the whole thing. They're going to need some time. And so maybe your personality is like, we got to deal with this right now. But maybe their personality, the 1s is like, oh, I need a little bit of time to process through this. I would say difficulty can arise when the 1 needs to be right. And so if you are 1 watching this, ask yourself, do I need to be right here? Am I right? Or do I need to be right? Do I feel like my need to be right is, taking over? Because you're not always going to be right. You really aren't. None of us are. And so maybe ask yourself that question. And then also, ask yourself this question of, am I listening? Do I have an open mind? And then I would just, recommend that if somebody is approaching you for conflict, listen and hear them. Go at it with conflict resolution mindset and understanding that they're more than likely not a 1, and learn about them. And so that's what I have on the type 1. Okay, so moving on to the type 2, what causes conflict with them? Well, theirs has to do with being taken advantage of or feeling like they're being taken advantage of. That can cause conflict within them. Or if they feel like you're backing them into a corner, that can cause conflict. If if they get backed up into this corner and they don't have anywhere else to go, and then also I would say not being heard is really hard for a 2 and can cause conflict. If they're talking or trying to do something or coming to you, wanting to help you, but you don't listen at all, or you just, railroad them, that is going to cause conflict within them. So look for those. And so what does the behavior look like within the 2 when this happens? I would say they keep their feelings to themselves because they are trying to avoid conflict. And so a lot of times they're going to go inward. So a lot of times they're going to keep everything to themselves and just keep moving along. And then once they do say something, because eventually they're going to say something, it almost is like too emotional or too like the 2 goes towards the 8 when under stress. And so if there's conflict, they're going towards their 2 or their 8. And, all of a sudden they might be from 0 to 100 in that moment. And so that could be what the behavior looks like. And I'll say they're really good at thinking through what they're going to say and understand their own feelings and stuff. And the most important thing is with this too, is that you do see them and hear them and understand them and know these things about them. And then how to navigate within that type 2. And when in conflict with them, I would say, let them talk and really get out all their feelings and all their thoughts and what's really going on. Provide them that safe space, ask questions that shows you're listening, and then you're trying to understand their point of view. Share your perspective, but also make sure to validate what their perspective is, right? And so yours is important, but so is theirs. And so bring both of those into the conversation and then allow for space to discuss feelings and emotions, because that's important to that too. And then what I would say for that too, if you're watching this and you're a 2, ask yourself, what kind of job are you doing expressing your own needs and feelings and desires and wants? Sometimes we think like people should just know. And yeah, you've probably given them lots of hints and different things, but sometimes people don't know. So just do a good job or make sure that you're expressing your needs, which is going to be super difficult, but that's why we're here. We're here to learn about ourselves and the people in our life. So let's move on to the type 3. And so what causes conflict within that type 3? Being on a team or being a part of something and it not going well and then them being blamed. That will cause conflict. And then not receiving credit for the work that they did do. They want the credit. Obviously, they want to look good and, achieve things and be successful. And all of their desires are intertwined. And so if they don't get the recognition they need or wanted for the parts that they did, that can cause conflict. And then also being put in a position where failure is likely, that's definitely going to make them upset. And then also when things aren't like just moving forward at a fast pace, if there's delays or anything like that, that can really upset them because they're super focused, they're hyper focused, they want to move forward, they want to, check their list off, get their goals achieved. And if anything comes against that, that can upset them and that can cause conflict. What does the behavior look like within that 3? Well, I would say, I think their body gets a little tense. I think you can read them. You can understand that something's upset. They're not likely to say it, but there is a shift in their personality that happens. They can become kind of abrupt with their words and honestly not actually understand what they're feeling, because that is hard for them to really know what they're feeling. But if they're upset or angry, they can get negative about things. They can just feel misunderstood. But again, they're not likely to say a ton in the moment. A lot of times they need someone to help them process it with them. Okay, and how to navigate with a type 3 when you're in conflict? I would say be sensitive with them. Be sensitive that they aren't, image is important to them. Be sensitive to that. Be sensitive to criticism, because criticism definitely is harder for them. Be kind to them. Have clarity with your words, be very rational, use a problem solving approach, kind of like the type 1. That works really well with the 3. And then if you are a 3 and you're watching this and you're like, well, what do I do, if I'm in conflict and what can I do to own my part? I would say, make sure you're being honest with yourself and with them. Make sure that even if it makes you not look good, you still go forward in it, because it's okay to not look good. Understand your why and why you're upset or why something is happening, and own your own part in it and look for that. And so anyways, that's the type 3. Let's move on to the type 4. Okay, so the type 4. What causes conflict within the 4? The first thing that comes to mind is when they're asked to do something that conflicts with who they are, their authenticness, who they are as a person. If it conflicts with that, that's going to upset them. Being ignored, that's a big one for the 4. I think what can cause conflict in the fours, if their feelings not being heard. To them, their feelings and their emotions are super important. And when they try to talk about them, if it's another personality that doesn't have access to theirs or isn't giving them any space, that can cause them to get hurt, withdraw, and become upset and angry. And so those are some things that causes conflict within the four. And then the behaviors, what does the four look like with, when they're in conflict or when this is happening? They get really quiet. They withdraw for a long time. A lot of times they're trying to process a lot of emotions and so many feelings are coming at them at the same time. They can get really blunt. It's so funny because they could withdraw or they could be blunt. Either one of those are behaviors that they will exhibit. So moving right along to how to navigate conflict with that Enneagram Type 4. The first thing I'm going to say is don't place blame on them or accuse them when wanting to start a conversation. That's never going to go well with them. It's going to immediately put them on the defense. The next thing is be attentive and really listen until they are finished talking. They need to be heard. They need to be understood. They need to know that you're really listening and that you want conflict resolution and you want to get through this together. The next thing I would say is don't tell the four that they are being too sensitive. This is extremely hurtful for the Type 4. They aren't too sensitive. They have a lot of feelings. They have a lot of depth to them, and they need to be able to work through this without, any words of judgment being placed on them. And then the last thing is allow for open discussion about feelings and with feelings. This is important to the Type 4. So if you want to navigate potential conflict or conflict at all, just remember that this is important to them. It's okay to have feelings involved. And then the question I would ask yourself if you are a 4 is, are you holding on to those feelings and emotions for an extremely long time? Obviously we want you to process them. We want you to walk through them. They are valid. I want other people to validate them for you. But I think they need to be validated. But also I think the thing to ask yourself is, how long are you going to hold on to them? How long is this going to take? And if it does take a long time, if it takes you a long time in the journey, that's fine. But if you're just holding on to it to hold on to it, that's where we run into issues. All right, so let's move right along to the Type 5. What causes conflict within or with the Type 5? For them, I think it's when things feel out of control, or things get put on their plate that they didn't know was going to get put on their plate, or when plans change like all the time, or when they're expected to show up and all of a sudden it's like, say it's a Friday and they have their evening planned of what they're going to do. And then maybe, someone's like, hey, actually, this is what we need to do tonight. We're actually going to go to an event, or we're going to go do something. Like that can cause conflict because it's like, they're not ready for that. They haven't prepared for that. And so just being surprised can cause conflict. Another thing is overwhelming tasks that causes conflict. Just remember, they understanding everything is really important to them. And so if something is super overwhelming and they don't understand it, and that's going to be hard for them. Dishonesty, that's a conflict activator for them. And then breaking confidences. When they tell somebody something, they do expect it to stay and not be talked about. And so, and all this seems like, well, of course, all of us feel that way, but it's not true. It's not something that would cause conflict within each person, but within the 5, it does. So, and for the 5, their behaviors, what do their behaviors look like? I would say a 5, as for as much as they're quiet and withdrawn and, they say very little, every once in a while, they say a lot. And it's like, bam, and then their anger kind of explodes, but then it goes away. And so that's kind of a behavior within them. They also are going to go in their head. They're in this thinking triad, and they're going to live in their head and think about it and process it mentally. And then, for them, they're going to withdraw. They're going to pull back from whatever's going on. They're going to withdraw. So those are some of the behaviors that can happen. How to navigate with that 5 when you're in conflict. I would say maintain a real rational approach, a real logical approach, not feelings based if possible. That's how you're going to reach them the best. And then also give them plenty of time of like, hey, I need to talk to you. Well, it can't be like right then on your time. Just give them like some time. Like maybe you say, hey, tomorrow or in a few hours or anything like that. Give them some time, give them some advance notice, and then give them physical space. They need space to process this. They need physical space. And then if you are a 5 watching this, I would ask yourself, like during conflict, like, are you expressing yourself? Are you not expressing, or how are you expressing yourself? And are you expressing your feelings and your emotions? Tap into that side of you. And I have quite a few 5s on this channel that comment all the time, and I'm speaking to you. You got to tap into that to process what's going on. So, all right, so let's move right along to the type 6. We're not really almost done. 6, 7, 8, 9. We have 4 left, guys. Okay, so the type 6. What causes conflict within that type 6? I would say when they feel like they can't trust you, if some dishonesties happened or anything like that, that'll cause conflict because they need to be able to trust you. They want to be trusted. So anything like that, when pressure's put on them, that causes conflict. Because a lot of times they, that just like can be a potential putting pressure on a 6. Like, come on, we gotta go. Let's do this, or this is due, or, whatever it is, it just doesn't allow them a lot of time to think about all the scenarios and process them. And so putting any pressure on them can cause conflict. Not allowing them the freedom to ask a ton of questions, that can upset the 6 and cause conflict if they feel like they have to not get to, or if they feel like they can't say what's on their mind and what they're thinking and feeling or anything like that. Because a lot of times the 6 is like, hey, have we thought it all through? And if they feel like that's not allowed or there's no safe space to do that, they're gonna be upset, and that could cause conflict. Okay, so what do the behaviors look like within the 6? I would say sometimes they're highly reactive, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they withdraw and get quiet, sometimes they're highly reactive. I don't know if that helps at all, but that's the truth. A lot of times, the thing that the 6 deals with is projecting, and so they're gonna project their own thoughts and feelings in the situation and onto the other person. So we got to watch for that. Like I kind of talked about at the beginning, we can't project. We can't expect everybody to show up like us. It's not fair, but that is one of their behaviors that can happen. They can start to project that onto the other person. And then how to navigate within conflict with the type 6. Give them space, allow them to share, be warm, be kind, be genuine, validate them. And if trust has been lost, start that process of rebuilding trust. And the last thing, if you are watching this and you are a 6, kind of like what I already said, really look inward and think and ask yourself, am I projecting? Is this a me thing, or is this an us thing? Is it a them thing? But own your own parts and look within yourself and ask yourself if you are projecting. What does that look like? So, okay, so let's move on to the type 7. I need to move around a bit. I've been sitting here for a while. But if you've made it to this point, good job. I know this is a long video. I know this is a lot of information, but it's so important. Hopefully you're taking notes. Hopefully you're taking notes about yourself and the people in your life so that you can understand how to handle conflict and resolve conflict. But moving on to that type 7. What causes conflict within that 7? I would say when things get boring, when things just drag on, when they don't have the ability to have freedom within whatever's going on, when they feel trapped, something like that, that can cause conflict. And then, criticism. Criticism's really hard for the 7, especially if they don't feel like it's just, if they feel like unjust criticism, that's really hard for the 7. Not being taken seriously. That is super hard for the 7. They want to be taken seriously. They might be, and not all 7s, but a lot of 7s are like, hey, how's it going? Life at the party. But just because that's, how they present themselves doesn't mean they don't want to be taken seriously. So that can cause conflict if they're not taken serious. And then, feeling like they're not wanted or their opinions aren't wanted, or, they just feel like, you're dismissed. We don't care about your thoughts and feelings. That will cause conflict within the 7. What do their behaviors look like within being in conflict? For them, it is avoidance, right? They're avoiding. They want to avoid thinking about it, feeling it, dealing with it. They're like, okay, what's the next adventure I can go on? Where can I go? What can I do? What can I do that's fun? So theirs is avoidance. I think for them, they're gonna, even if there is conflict, they're gonna try to talk their way out of it, or reframe it, or be optimistic, or something like that. To have to sit down and process it is difficult for them. And how to navigate, if you are in conflict with a 7, well, allow them to fully express themselves. Allow them to be them, right? We want each person to show up themselves. And so, provide that, allow that, communicate your understanding of their feelings, understand their feelings, be sincere with them, be non-judgmental, ask, questions, but non-judgmental questions, right? And process it with them. And then if you are 7 and you're watching this, my piece of advice for you is to make sure you are sitting in your feelings and sitting in the hard and processing the hard and allowing, that conflict resolution to happen, even if you have to deal with real feelings and real emotions. It's okay. And, I know this is painful for the 7, but this is, just the best way for you to get through conflict and to understand yourself. All right. So moving on to that type 8, what causes conflict with them? The first thing I'm going to say is things not being fair, injustices happening, not dealing directly with the problems at hand. They want directness. They want to just, okay, what do you think? What do I think? Let's process it. Let's be direct. And if we're not direct, that really bothers them. Being blindsided. Oh my goodness. That's such a hard one for the 8. They hate being blindsided. They hate surprises that way. And then also dishonesty, that instant conflict for the 8. And what can the behaviors look like when the 8 is upset or in conflict? They want to avoid feeling vulnerable, avoid feeling out of control. They need to be in control at all times. And so you're going to see a little bit of that. Sometimes if they don't respect the person, they'll just dismiss them and move on. They won't want to work through it or deal with it. But for the most part, they do want to work through conflict. They can have anger show up when they're upset or in conflict. Sometimes anger is hiding other emotions. And so always keep that in mind also. And then also they might just sit and sort through what's going on. And so those are some of the behaviors you're going to see within that type 8. And then how to navigate conflict with the type 8. Listen to them. Be honest with them. Be direct with them. Don't blame them. Even we should never just blame each other. Again, my whole purpose today of teaching this is for us to own our own side of the street. And so when we blame someone, we put it all on them. And so don't blame them. That is really hard for an 8. And then if you are an 8 and you are watching this, I would say ask yourself, am I able to be vulnerable? Am I able to share my feelings? That's always good, because guess what? Sometimes conflict wouldn't even happen if somebody knew how you really felt. 8s don't do a good job of letting others fully understand what they're feeling, which I know that it's really hard for an 8 because it's vulnerable. But man, so much conflict can be resolved if somebody just knew, oh, that's how you feel. Oh, okay, that makes sense now. Something like that, right? And so my advice is to be vulnerable, not give all your pearls away, but be vulnerable, show your softer side to yourself and to the people in your life. All right, the last one, the type 9. I'm sorry, 9s are always last. I've got to change that. I've got to switch it up next time, but for now, we're at the type 9. I'm a type 9. I fully understand this one the best. And so what can cause conflict within that type 9? I would say the first thing that comes to mind is somebody trying to control them, being told what to do. That's really hard for a 9. They're peacekeepers. They want to go with the flow, but they definitely don't want to be controlled. Having their harmony disrupted or their peace of mind disrupted, that can cause conflict. Having their peaceful environment disrupted, feeling ignored, feeling like they're just not being listened to, like their voice doesn't matter, and then not feeling supported. Those are some things that can cause conflict within the 9. What do their behaviors look like? What shows up within the 9 when conflict is happening? The first thing I can think of is, they say nothing. They just go with the flow. They don't want to cause conflict. Why? Because they're afraid of losing the relationship. And so they get quiet. But that's not always a good thing, because that builds and builds and builds, and then that blows. So that is something the 9 has to watch for. There might be conflict there, which makes them mad because they don't want to deal with conflict, but then they don't even know they're mad because they're hiding their anger from themselves. And so that is one way it can look, which causes them to displace that anger onto somebody else or something else. That's definitely a thing where maybe they don't even know they're angry, or they are angry, but they're so afraid of losing that relationship that they turn their attention to something else. And then now they're angry at that. That can happen. And then the last thing for them, the behaviors, they'll withdraw. They'll go quiet. They won't answer texts or calls or anything. It's like, I don't know how to deal with it, so I'm not going to deal with it. And so that's, some of the behaviors that you might see when there's conflict with the type 9. And then how do we navigate conflict with that type 9? I would say listen to them. Listen fully. Help them process what's happening. Just understanding their side, understanding what they're feeling. Help them see or understand if there is anger there. Process it with them. Affirm them when they do share their own feelings or their own thoughts, because that's really hard for them. Sit down and talk with them. I guess that's the biggest thing for them. Just talk through it. Work through it. They see all sides, and they see your side, I promise. As much as they see their own side, they see your side. And so for them, it's just sitting down and listening to their point of view and maybe what made them angry or hurt or not heard or any of those things that cause conflict. And if you are a 9 and you are watching this, my question for you is, are you letting others know your own desires, your own feelings, what you really think? Because sometimes we get our feelings hurt because we feel like those are taken advantage of, but maybe sometimes they don't even know your thoughts and feelings. Does that make sense? Where we need to express them. We need to show up to our life and express, who we are really. And then also express our anger. If we have some anger, feel free to let it out, obviously not like, but like in a healthy way. Just to for me, it would be like me saying the words, you know what? I'm angry. That's what it looks like for me as a 9. I'm angry. And it feels good sometimes to go, oh my gosh, I'm angry. Why am I angry? What's underneath that? Am I hurt? Did my feelings get hurt? Do I feel ignored? Just all of those things, right? And so acknowledging why you're angry or why you're hurt or anything like that. So, all right, this video is so long. I apologize. I tried to make it short, but I wanted to just share so much on conflict within all 9 Enneagram types. And so this is where we landed. But yeah, I hope this helped you today. It helped you understand yourself and understand those in your life better. My goal was just to say, okay, what causes conflict? What do the behaviors look like? How do we navigate that? Just those little 3 questions to be answered. There's so much more that can be taught on this, I know, but I just wanted something not really short, kind of short and sweet. And hopefully you took notes and hopefully you understand each other better. And so that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for supporting me, supporting this channel. I really appreciate you guys. If you haven't already subscribed, subscribe. If you really enjoyed this video, how you could support me is to push that like button. That means a lot to me. We need more peace, guys. I'm a peacemaker though. We need more harmony. We need more peace. We just need more opportunities to hear each other and to understand each other and to recognize we're different and that it's okay that we're different. And I don't know, that's all I got, but I will leave you with that. So until next time, bye guys.